So there's a few key things, both as an employer. I've realized that people often work with me for 2 to 5 years. They get ahead, they reach their goals, and there's a celebration when they go on to the next right thing. Now, I do need to replace them at some point, which is kind of sad for me, but it's also a celebration over their freedom and their next steps. So for people who are in that place that are struggling, it starts with identifying, what do you want to do? What could you do? And what might you be okay with? So that could be you starting a business. That could be you taking a more passive route and simply putting money into certain investments that pay a high rate of return. Or it could be some level of entrepreneurship into real estate. And it's a bit of matching who you are, what you want to be, with the opportunities that are available.
All right. It's the Real Estate Law Podcast. Jason Muth here with Pride Away Stays and Straightforward Short-Term Rentals. We have our attorney and real estate broker, Rory Gill. Rory is here from the downstairs office. What's going on, Rory?
It's good to be here, Jason.
Rory, we're talking to someone today who has amazing ideas as to how people can become work optional in 3 to 5 years. Business owners, accredited investors. Work is cathartic at times, but it's stressful at other times. And, you and I have talked to lots of people on this podcast who are looking to get out of their W-2 jobs. They're looking to build strategies as to how they can incorporate more passive investments into their active investments and diversify a little bit. And folks that are trying to figure out the tax strategies among all those things. And I think that we have a great guest today that we can explore some of those topics.
Yeah, I love the tagline of, make work optional in 3 to 5 years, but obviously the devil's in the details. So let's get right into it.
It certainly is. So please welcome Keith Blackborg. Keith is from Texas, and Keith has all the answers as to how we can become work optional in 3 to 5 years. Is that right, Keith?
I do my best. Thanks so much for having me, Jason and Roy.
So Keith, Financial Journey is your company, right?
Correct.
And what exactly is, like, when you launched this, what was your thesis? Like, you were probably launched this business and said there's a lot of people that you could serve with lots of great information about tax strategies and wealth building. What were the types of folks that you were encountering that made you want to launch a business such as Financial Journey?
Yeah, some of it comes from my own personal story and just realizing there's a lot of people that need help with this. And two, I was a millionaire by age 30, had some financial success. And I thought if I wanted to make as much money as possible, I can continue on in commercial real estate. But for me, this is an opportunity to have an impact on others. I actually like talking wealth. And as a CPA, I actually love talking tax strategy. Mm-hmm. And so this is an opportunity to serve other investors, other entrepreneurs, other people that want a certain measure of freedom in their life.
I was re-listening to a past episode that we recorded with a bunch of guys that run a podcast called Queer Money. And they said something about discussions about wealth are things that we should do more of and earlier in our careers. It just seems like such a weird, dirty topic that, I'm a little older than you, and we were never raised on talking about finances, wealth, whether family or friends or even at work. I understand why at work they don't want you to talk about that because they want you to still work for them, right? Mm-hmm. But Keith, what are your thoughts on beginning this level of education earlier in all of our professional lives?
I think it needs to start young. And there's a thing we do in our community of really looking at how do we educate our kids and what are the right times to have those conversations and how do we foster entrepreneurship. And then it continues on in our community. So the main thing I do is I help facilitate a community of self-directed millionaires on how to reach work optional and then beyond to wealth optimization. And part of that is building safety and the opportunity to be vulnerable within our community to have some of these conversations. And there's a couple things we do. One, we have an opportunity for people to do due diligence shares. So we'll have people that come in and they might have $1 million portfolio, or tomorrow we've got somebody with a $70 million portfolio, and they are sharing exactly what their numbers are, where they're invested, and our community will come in and provide specific feedback to help them understand what they could be doing better or differently to optimize their portfolio towards their stated goals.
Do you think there's a level of shame to talking about this? Like, are people that don't have the level of the $70 million or even the $1 million person, are they afraid to speak up and say, not that they need help, but how do you get there?
Yes, I think there's a lot of fear people have around. They feel like they should be farther along than they are, that they should know this, that they should have been saving, they should have been doing all these things. The truth is, everybody's making mistakes. Everybody's missing opportunities. And frankly, I can have somebody who might own a $10 million business and they'll come to me and they're saying, I'm embarrassed that I don't know this stuff. And the truth is, most people got to where they are because they focused on one thing over a period of time, whether that's real estate investing or growing a business or growing a career. And that is what allowed them to make a lot of money, was really that focus and specialization. And that's where having a community around you, learning how to grow wealth as the business, is a big deal. And to your point, really demystifying and telling people it's okay to have these conversations and putting them in groups with their peers where they can, to an extent, mastermind around this and really know what the next right steps could or should be.
Yeah, I can relate personally, having worked for over 25 years for other people, big corporations, and these conversations never happened. I kind of alluded to it in the introduction. I was a hiring manager at one time. We all report to people, obviously. And it's despite the fact that layoffs happen, off and on at many companies, in economic cycles, it's not easy to hire people. It just isn't. Regardless of if unemployment's 3% or 10%, right? It's hard to find the right people and good people and then train them well. And I say that because, when companies find employees that they like, they say they want to nurture them, and some do, but they don't want them to leave. And I'm guessing a lot of people that you work with are either working in full-time jobs or they're entrepreneurs. They found the way to leave that job, and now they're saying, how do I accelerate even more?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few key things. Both as an employer, I've realized that people often work with me for 2 to 5 years. They get ahead, they reach their goals, and there's a celebration when they go on to the next right thing. Now, I do need to replace them at some point, which is kind of sad for me, but it's also a celebration over their freedom and their next steps. So for people who are in that place that are struggling, it starts with identifying, what do you want to do? What could you do? And what might you be okay with? So that could be you starting a business. That could be you taking a more passive route and simply putting money into certain investments that pay a high rate of return. Or it could be some level of entrepreneurship into real estate. And it's a bit of matching who you are, what you want to be, with the opportunities that are available.
Let's go back to one of the initial questions that I asked, which I think was one of the great hooks when we learned about you, Keith, which was, how do business owners become work optional in 3 to 5 years? We've heard about working for your business or on your business, not for your business. So do entrepreneurs get stuck, doing the day-to-day too much so they're not able to elevate themselves to the CEO that they should be? Do they not see a pathway out of their business? Do they not want out of their business? How do you do it? Like, what do you start with when you talk to somebody for the first time?
One of my favorite questions is, are you too busy working in the business to be wealthy? So people will often get tied up in the day-to-day business, as you've said, and they miss out on the opportunity to be truly wealthy. There's this point where once you've got that $1 million net worth, that there needs to be a transition in your focus to really, how do I grow these assets? And that's why we talk about wealth as the business. If you can earn an amazing 15% return when you've got $1,000, that's only $150 a year in return. But if it's $1 million, that's $150,000. So part of what we do is we come alongside you. We look at what are your options, and you learn how to invest in different self-directed, alternative, traditional. We put a plan together to help you learn how to invest. Along the way, if you own a business, we're packaging it up for sale. Like, what are the things we need to do to maximize your SOPs, your contracts, your employees, your financials, to get the highest valuation possible and then sell in a few years? Or if you've got a real estate portfolio, how do we position that for sale? Do we optimize it so it's more passive, or are we trying to sell it at some point? If you're a passive investor, what are the right passive investments you need for you? In the beginning, it's more likely equity investments where you're going to grow equity quickly. Later, we're transitioning to investments that provide reliable, consistent cash flow, because that's what you need to feel comfortable leaving your job.
Yeah, one, I wouldn't say mistake, but one revelation I had a couple of years ago, once I realized that what we're doing now, and just to give you a little background, Keith, is that I have, 2 years ago, my job ended. We were doing short-term rental real estate on the side. We have 5 properties that we own. And I said, you know what? Screw that. I'm not going back to the industry. Like that kind of ran its course. And I'm just going to ride out to the sunset with the properties that we have, operate those, just get better at it, pay down the mortgages, live off the cash flow. We'll have all this equity in a few years. And then that's it. Sounds good, right? And we kind of did that and optimized it. And then I started getting the itch saying, well, what's next? Like, I got to find something else. So I investigated some of the passive investment opportunities, that syndicators have out there. And I was like, that's not going to make me satisfied. Like, I'm not going to be fulfilled, because you're just kind of putting your money into something. You're doing some due diligence, and then you don't do anything, right? You can't get your fingers dirty with it. So we've pivoted, launched this business, Pride Away Stays. This thing's off to the races now, and I'm actually like back in the entrepreneurial mindset. But how do you get folks like me, where I'm thinking now, like out of the do mindset, saying what's the next chapter with those types of businesses?
Yeah, there's a couple of key points you bring up. So I learned a long time ago that the thought of retirement terrifies a bunch of entrepreneurs that love to grow and build. And so part of what we try to do is encourage people to take a sabbatical. So after you've had a big exit, take at least a month. For those that can, maybe a year. For me, I took 3 years where I just traveled the world and got the best souvenir out of it, my firstborn son at the time. And so the point is to take a step back when you can, and some of the best growth you can have happens in the quiet after you've been growing for a long period of time. And then from a place where you're relaxed, you've had some time to process, you can then start processing what could be next. And in our community, we do a competitive advantage exercise that looks at what are your skills, what are your financial resources, what are your relationships. Let's look at everything that you have at your disposal and chart a path to wealth.
Rory, what I'm loving hearing that Keith is talking about is, we kind of came on, with a few different questions that we have. We're going to talk about tax strategy in just a little bit. How do you reach that work optional goal in a few years if you're an entrepreneur? But, a lot of what he's touching upon is what I'm also learning in my mastermind. And it's not the nuts and bolts as to how to do it. It's the bigger picture thought process that people have to go through. And a lot of folks that work for so long, they don't have that coach. They don't have that conversationalist that you can, walk down the hallway and talk to an assistant or talk to a manager about. That's just not the appropriate space in a W-2 environment. But, Rory, you've heard me talking a lot about this, mindset stuff of late. And I think that's really what Keith is probably alluding to as well when he works with, clients within his groups.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like to really get to the stage where Keith is the expert, there's a prerequisite of having some success with active income, whether it's a W-2 or as an entrepreneur. I think there's a little bit of a danger with a lot of people who are entrepreneurs thinking that they have passive income because their business throws it off, and they ignore the fact that they're working 60 hours a week to do that in the first place. But before we get into the nitty-gritty and the tactics of it all, can you speak to that? What is the role of active income? What is the proper role of active entrepreneurship for somebody who does want to reach that work optional stage early in their life?
So entrepreneurship in business is the fastest way to grow wealth quickly. So growing a business, highest, if you're going to look at people who are millionaires in their 20s or 30s, it's because they did business. Now, to become a millionaire in real estate, there's a little bit of a business component. There's also an asset component. And typically it's about 20 years. We were coming off what has been the greatest growth period of real estate in U.S. history. And so it happened a little quicker in that time period. but real estate is the best way to get there reliably, because you could buy one rental house a year for 20 years, pay them off, and you would be done. And so it might not be the most time efficient, but it's the most reliable way. If you're strictly passive doing traditional investments, most millionaires you're going to hear who reach that through stock investing are going to be in their 60s and 70s. And it just takes one bad cycle to throw you off and you not reach those goals. And to your point earlier about the nuts and bolts, people typically come to us wanting to know the nuts and bolts. They disregard the mindset, the community part. That's the fluff stuff. And to an extent, I used to think that way too. But having realized the value in the community, and really it starts bringing up a trend where everybody's moving in the right direction, it makes a difference. And then lastly, trying to make action easy on people. People are often like, you get busy with kids, family, and you're just trying to put one foot in front of the other. And so we try to make it easy for people where we can, whether it's talking tax strategy, or in our community, we've got an investment menu that you can choose from investments. And we've got a volunteer due diligence council that goes out, looks at all these ahead of time. And that's where you've already had a set of eyes, and it's more just picking and choosing what's going to be easy for you.
I used to think that the mindset stuff was the fluff as well, but it's not. It's important. It is. It just changes the way that you approach things. I mean, like, I never looked at end of life stuff until now. I'm past 40 a few years. Hopefully I'll live to, a fulfilling life, till 100 or whatever I want to be, maybe not 100. But, when you're 20, you're accumulating, right? At some point you say, how much more do I have to accumulate? Or, can I actually enjoy some of the stuff that I have? And, by working with high net worth people or folks that are, $1 million, 2, 3, or 70 million, they're probably still in that accumulation phase because we're all used to it. We're all looking for, well, how do I keep, because there's also the fear of loss. Like, what if I lose it all? It's probably not going to happen, but like, what if I lose it all? But we're all just used to continuing to get, and then save that sometimes you forget to enjoy. So I'm sure those are things that you talk about with some of your community members.
And absolutely, to your point that I meant to hit on earlier, growing the wealth, growing their initial property, that's about accumulation. And then later you're taking that net worth and you're transitioning it to cash flowing investments, whether it's something you control or it's more passive.
Yeah. So let's talk about some tax strategies though, that you advise on, or that you'll just, tell some of the people in your community to investigate. Let's start with some folks that maybe they're working, traditional W-2 jobs. They want to start to diversify their income streams. What are some ways that they can do it either tax-free or where they can reduce their tax burden by continuing to grow their wealth?
Yeah, I'd love to share one that your audience has probably never heard of, and then we can go to some of the other ones that are more common. Are you familiar with discounted rollovers, moving money from a traditional to Roth at a significant discount?
Or did we do something like that? I don't know what we do.
I'm aware of rollovers, but I guess you're catching me here. I've heard of you kind of do the latter method where you roll some things out of an IRA into a Roth IRA and then kind of wait 5 years for the money to mature. But I don't think that's what you're getting at here.
Oh, this is another fun one. All right, I'll share. So this is, let's say you put in over time $100,000 to make the numbers round into a traditional retirement account. It can be a traditional IRA or 401k. And then we invest that into an apartment complex going through a heavy rehab. And I'm going to oversimplify the concept to make the point here. So you invest $100,000, you bought it when maybe the net operating income is $80,000. And apartments are loosely based on the net operating income. Let's say we're kicking out some non-performing tenants, doing a major rehab, the net operating income drops down to $40,000. We get an independent valuation done. And in that example, our apartment valuation has dropped in half. So the valuation comes in at $50,000. We do a rollover of the asset, not the cash, to the Roth account. And then because you've gone with a successful syndicator that you know and trust, it now pops up in value all within a Roth to maybe $200,000 a few years later. And so you've gotten a $100,000 deduction, putting the money in. You paid taxes on $50,000 on the rollover, but you're still net ahead $50,000. And then you've got this big chunk of money in a Roth.
Growing tax-free.
Growing tax-free, absolutely. And you're withdrawing it, and you're never paying taxes again. Part of it, if you're a successful entrepreneur, hopefully your tax rate does not fall when you reach retirement.
Yeah, so the strategy there is trying to unlock some money that hasn't been taxed yet. Pay tax on a lower amount of money and then put that into a tax-free account and watch that grow tax-free. That's fascinating. Yeah, that's Rory. What you have a question?
No, I mean, just I'm kind of combining outside concepts to grasp this, but this is basically strategic tax loss harvesting with an actual asset combined with a rollover into a Roth, and then letting it grow from there. I love it. That is a new one for me. I've never heard of that.
That's good. There's other ways to do that with either development deals or buying an operating hotel, shutting it down, and then reopening it as an apartment. If you're familiar with stacking lack of marketability, lack of control discounts, there's ways to get some big discounts. And it's really about partnering with a syndicator and getting the timing right, matching the right deal to the right strategy.
Is it partnering with the syndicator, and then the money that you're using to invest with the syndicator is money coming out of a traditional IRA of yours, or where would that
Correct. So I don't actually get like a percentage of the GP fee. There's just a independent CPA fee to help facilitate all that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, absolutely, it's a self-directed retirement account that the client is managing, and especially when you get a group of investors that want to do this together, it can be a strong win for a lot of people.
Rory, we've heard from a number of people that have come on this podcast talking about self-directed IRAs and being able to unlock that money to invest it in real estate. Can you recall the commonality that we've heard from all these people, Rory, or no? I might be leading you down the wrong path.
Well, I mean, the commonality I've heard with the self-directed IRAs is that I've rarely heard it discussed in the Roth context, but I've heard it discussed a lot in the IRA context, where I think it departs for a lot of people who are in our audience. A lot of people in our audience like to get their hands dirty, to see the property, to work on it themselves. But that's largely incompatible with the self-directed IRA, where you have to really just be a passive investor in the process and keep your hands out of the actual operations of the home. So I think that's been a limitation for a lot of people. It's been a limitation for us, and it's been a limitation for a lot of the people that are in our audience.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say also, having worked for so long, you put money into a 401k when you work, right? And then as you leave jobs, you could roll that forward into the next 401k or roll it into a IRA. I think that we rolled mine into traditional IRAs. We might have rolled some into Roth IRA, and then we used some depreciation against that at one point. But, we're just so used to being good worker bees, putting that money away in a 401k, knowing it's supposed to be in an index fund or maybe some stocks. And then here I am with all this money now in an IRA, which I've turned over to a investment advisor who is a friend of ours to mind over that money, right? And, thankfully that's now, it's an important part of our net wealth, but it's a smaller part in that we have real estate investments as well that have a lot more equity than this IRA has in it. But I look at that IRA money and I say, oh, well, that's his money to, put in the stock market and watch it grow. But I certainly could unlock that money as well and invest in these types of syndication opportunities like you're suggesting, right, Keith?
That's absolutely correct. And to your point there, some people like to churn money over to another advisor. They feel comfortable with that. It makes them feel safe. Others, especially entrepreneurs who are used to being in control, they like the idea of self-directing. And that's really what we help people do, is get educated so they can do it themselves. We don't get paid based on how our community members invest. It's really about you learning how to take the next right steps and collaborating with other community members to grow faster, to grow wealth faster, pay less in taxes, and reach your goals.
One other thing that I think I should probably take as a lesson, and if you're listening to this, constantly reevaluate your own portfolio, is that when I switched things over to my investment advisor for my IRA, I think it was before we bought the majority of the investment income real estate that we have. And since the run up, you mentioned this run up a number of years ago, Keith, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see the world around us with real estate valuations in almost every market around the country. I should relook at that and say, well, wait a second, like that money back then was a lot of what I had and our home. That was it, right? Maybe a savings account. But now that we have all this real estate that we own that has a lot of equity in it as well, it's where does the IRA money fit in with the overall goal? Like right then it was so sacred. I was like, I'm not paying attention to this. I don't know what to do with it. Sitting in cash. Can you go take care of this and put it in the right investments? And now I just check it every so often just to make sure that it's still growing at the rate of the market, if not more. But I look at my real estate investments more. Like those are sexier.
I think it depends on where you're at in your real estate, in your overall journey. Part of it is age. So when I was 20, 25, first getting started in real estate, the thought of retirement at age 60 seemed so far away. And there I did stuff outside my retirement accounts and grew that because I wanted direct control. And I didn't want the government's strings attached telling me when and how I could do something. And then I'm 39 now. So the last few years, I'm like, okay, I've got enough outside my retirement account. Now it also makes sense to grow some stuff that's more tax advantaged within my retirement account. And the real eye opener for me was I had a tax client, a CPA client that owned 48 rental properties in a Roth retirement account, loan free. And so seeing that was like, wow, this guy, he hated taxes, never wanted to pay taxes again. And he had set himself up that way. And so just really seeing the power of that made a difference. But again, if you've got a big retirement account, you focus on retirement strategies that make a difference. If you're more of an individual, there's a whole bunch of other tax strategies that might make more sense for you.
There's some tax strategies to living in Texas, aren't there?
Just living in Texas means we virtually don't have any state income tax, and our business growth does well.
Yeah. Florida's another spot. We have property in New Hampshire. We're paying high property taxes there, but a lot of people enjoy their income tax free in New Hampshire. Is that right, Rory? Income tax free up there?
Yeah. Unfortunately, with this, there are no free rides.
Right.
So here in Massachusetts, we have a little bit of every tax, but no one tax is over the top. New Hampshire is lower tax, but it with no income tax, but the property taxes can be really high town by town.
Yeah. So Roy, you're telling me you're more of a connoisseur of taxes. You like a little sampling of all?
We pay a little bit of everything here in Massachusetts. So, a little bit of income tax, a little bit of sales tax, a little bit of property tax. I'm sure I'm missing a whole bunch, but just a little taste of everything.
Equal opportunity taxing. And we shouldn't say how much we cross the border to go shopping because we're supposed to pay use tax on that, right?
Yeah, and we always do, right?
Yeah, of course we do. All right, so before we get to some of our final questions, I am going to date this episode a little bit. We don't normally date the episodes, meaning I want them to live on forever and ever with all this great opportunity and all these great advice. But two things are probably going to date this a little bit. You do have an event coming out that I want to talk about because the episode's coming out right before the passive income event. But what do you think, before we talk about that, Keith, what are some of the really good things that people should be looking at today in terms of investment opportunities? We're recording this for the latter half of 2024. I don't know if it's going to be different next year if people pick up this episode in 2025, but where are you looking to place your bets these days?
Yeah. So for me, I'm looking at where prices are high and will they continue to go high? So one, I think the stock market is at a high. Will it continue to go up? Maybe. I think the real estate market, I'd probably hold off for 3 to 6 months and give it a little time unless you see a clear deal. If you're a local investor, sometimes you can just always pick up good deals. By all means, go for it. But I'm going to be hesitant until we see where interest rates and some things go. I also like commodities right now. So oil and gas right now, being in Texas, we see a lot of these deals. There are a lot of bad deals, but we really do our due diligence. We've got some great oil and gas engineers in our community that help vet what we do, and that helps identify some of the best things. So oil and gas, especially drilling costs, has a ton of tax benefits, and it's a big write-off. Same with real estate, getting into the right deal and then getting some big deductions to offset your other passive income can really make a big win for investment and tax deduction.
All right. And passive income event. Did I get the name of that right? Passive investor event. I'm sorry. Is this your first one that you've done, or have you done them in the past? Like, tell us about the event and what it's been like to.
Yeah. So passiveinvestorevent.com. This is our big annual event. We'll have 300-ish accredited investors in the room. This is frankly, our second year doing the event. We did it last year, had 150, 160 people, and just the number of support. People had such a great time last year. They've been telling their friends about it. And really what it is, it's meant to be your one-stop shop for everything wealth related. So you can come in, we'll have different investment providers. We've got accountants, lawyers, estate planning, insurance guys. So you come in, there's a process that we will go through to identify where you are at in that journey and and have you actually grade yourself. And depending on what you need, we'll introduce you to specific professionals that can help you at every step of the journey. So you don't even need to join any membership, anything. It's a very cost-effective thing, and you get everything what you need just to show up in one place.
All right. We will link to that in the show notes in case you listen to this and you're in Texas or you want to hop down there. It's in Texas, right?
Correct. It's close to the Dallas airport.
All right. Excellent. Well, yeah, I'll be in Austin in late October, so maybe I'll just come early.
Hop on by.
State, yeah. All right. So let's get to our final three questions that we ask all of our guests, and then we'll learn a little bit more where people can reach out to you directly. Keith, first question, if you can get on stage for half an hour and talk about any subject in the world with zero preparation, what would that be?
Wealth as the business. Really, how to self-direct, some key strategies that will make a difference in your life and really getting to the heart of what's important to you. I feel like I've got something most people never have, and that's enough. And so just really drilling in on what that is, and then we can reverse engineer the wealth to get you there.
Do people feel like they ever have enough? You do, I guess. I don't. I never do.
It's usually the people who have been around for a while, who are maybe a little tired. They want to take some chips off the table, and they're doing okay. So you get to somebody who can be work optional. They sit there for a little bit, and they're like, you know what? I really want to spend some time with my family or my friends or something else that really matters to them.
Yeah. You know, I actually saw a great LinkedIn article a post that a friend of mine made, old friend from a couple jobs ago. Just had a second child and works for Salesforce. And I guess he had a 6-month sabbatical for paternity leave. And he used the time to, kind of reconnect with his wife, with his now 2 kids, work out every day, get better. He talked about mental health a little bit, talked about physical health, kind of this holistic approach that a lot of people that are he's probably about your age too. He's probably about, late 30s, maybe 40. At that point in our lives, that's when we should be taking better inventory of those elements of our lives. You should do it constantly through your 20s and 30s, but people just forget. But I think when you hit your 40s, that's when you start to think about the bigger picture of, do I have enough? Am I on the pathway to have enough? Do I want to be around my family more? Do I want to have a better, life beyond work? And, this is where wealth building comes in.
You're right. Money is simply a tool, which is why we encourage our members to enjoy the journey, because the destination is the same for everyone.
Yeah, it certainly is. Can't take it with you. Second question, tell us something that happened early in your life or career that impacts the way that you're working today.
Oh, man. I started my career at Deloitte. And so I had about 2 months at one point where I was billing 18 to 20 hours a day, and getting through a 9-month busy season really just changed my mind in terms of it was possible. The partners at the time, on average, this is almost 2 decades ago, were making an average of $875,000 a year. And that's what changed my mind of, I didn't care about how much money I had at that point. My life was suffering. And so from that point on, I really prioritized enjoying the journey, and it shifted my priorities as a result. And I'm having a lot more fun. I've got boys, 2-year-old, 5-year-old, and I would rather spend the time with them now, enjoy the journey. And if I don't grow as much, I'm fine with that, because ultimately the time is what we get, and we can't ever get that back.
No. You can. We have a 5-year-old daughter, and she's taller every day. And I'm like, how is this happening, right? But you enjoy the journey. I think that having kids your age, like you start to look at it, you're like, okay, we're never going to have these moments again. So we might as well enjoy this. The final question we have: tell us something you're listening to or watching or reading these days.
Oh, what have I liked? One of the biggest ones that I really liked was "Buy Back Your Time" by Dan Martell.
Yep.
And this one has been really impactful in terms of how to hire effectively, getting the right people in, and really free up your time so I can be growing, working on the business, not in it.
Do you have time to sit down and read the books, or do you like audiobook it and then you get the books for the background that shows you all the different books you've read?
I will do the audiobooks for most things, but when I really enjoy a book, then I'll go read it. And there's the added step. There's some people I know that read like 100 books a year. I would rather read one book a month and apply it. And so after I like it, I'll sit down, I'll highlight it, I'll take notes, and I'll spend time actually figuring out how this is going to change my life. Because if you don't take that time to implement, then it's just more fluff that is never used.
I know some people that read the same book over and over and over and over just to really drill it into their heads. Excellent. All right. So Keith, where can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about what you're offering?
Sure. You can either find me at financialjourney.life, or you welcome to pick up a ticket to the Passive Investor event coming up in October 25th and 26th. About 500-ish a ticket, includes a couple days, bunch of meals. So it's really a great value.
Some learning and some laughs, I'm sure. I've been to a number of real estate events and meetups over the past couple of years, especially. And, those moments that you have with other people that have willingly chosen to go to the same event as you are priceless. It allows you to get out of your comfort zone a little bit, realize that people are there to meet each other and learn. We all have our guards up as humans, whether you're going to Keith's event or another person's event, even if you're going alone. I've been to a lot of these events alone, and then you leave the event, with friendships and people that you've connected to because they also went alone and they want to meet other people. So don't be afraid to go to events like these.
Yes. And our specialty is about building community at scale, and we will introduce you to particular people at a similar place in life and journey as part of that. So we'd love to see you there.
All right. And the weather's beautiful in Texas in October.
It is. One of the few times.
Rory, where can people get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me or book a meeting with me through my law practice, Urban Village Legal. That's at urbanvillagelegal.com.
All right. And if you've enjoyed this episode, we love 5-star reviews on iTunes, Spotify. We love your comments on YouTube. Please thumb us up whenever you see our faces pop over your feed. And subscribe to the podcast. Tell a friend. Spread the word. Thank you so much. We appreciate all that. And if you want to be a guest of the podcast, realestatelaw.podcast.com has our lead form, and you can fill that out, and we'll see if we think that your story is a good one to tell. Keith, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. Best of luck with the conference. I hope that you're able to influence more lives there as you've been doing all these years with your community. And we really appreciate your being on the podcast.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
The stop first first last first